for the Military Literature Festival, which, as you all know, has become a standard feature in Chandigarh. And it was started by His Excellency the Governor of Punjab, the Honourable Chief Minister, and with the blessing and active support of Headquarters Western Command. And that fortunately remains to this day, and we'll be holding the 8th Military Literature Festival this year, the main part of it, which is the panels, etc., on the 30th of November and the 1st of December. But before that, there are certain events that will take place, and the first event that will take place is the War Memorial. And at the War Memorial, His Excellency the Governor has been kind enough to be the chief guest. So he will be present, and this will be followed by a motorcycle ride, and this time there are about 1,200 motorcycles that will take place. This is called the Brave Heart motorcycle ride. And the reason why I showed you the clip earlier was that this motorcycle ride commemorates the 25 years since Kargil, since the operation in Kargil. And you must remember that the officer during these operations truly led the men. A great number of officers lost their lives, and also the men. I recall I had gone to the United States accompanying the then Chief of Army Staff, who had been the Chief of Army Staff during these operations, General Malik. And before leaving, he delivered a talk at the India International Centre in Delhi. And there were two things that I noted. The first was there were no pictures or videos of the terrain over which these lads had fought. And the second was that he didn't mention the casualties. Anyway, when we had taken off in the aircraft and we were heading towards United States, I was working on my laptop to write his speech. And after a while he came and sat down near me and he said, "Mao, what are you doing?" So I said, "I'm making notes and writing a speech which you are likely to deliver at various places." And I said, "I listened to what you had said at the India International Centre, but I think you made a mistake by not displaying the harsh terrain that our troops fought over. And for that, I've brought the clips with me. And the second thing which you didn't talk about was the casualties. I know every commander who has been in battle is a little chary about giving the casualty list." I said, "But you don't understand the Americans. Because the Americans, they respect sacrifice. And I would suggest to you, don't be shy about the casualties, because you know the casualties were taken because we couldn't expand the conflict. And everything had to be done within that area of the core. We couldn't extend it to the left or to the right. We couldn't carry out air operations, and therefore the casualties mounted." So anyway, we landed at New York, eventually went to Washington, D.C., and there he was to meet the Secretary of State. So I pressed him again. I said, please mention the casualties. So this time he did. And there are some things you can't fake. The Secretary of State, when he heard this, his eyes were wet with tears. So what your boys do, what your lads do, and now thankfully your girls are going to do in operations, bear that in mind. And although we have received instructions that those who die in battle or those who die in Jammu and Kashmir, they are to be referred to as killed in action. But I can tell you from my own experience, because from 2017 till today, there have been over 135 Punjabis who laid down their lives in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. I have been to their various bhogs and ceremonies, and as far as the house is concerned, as the people of the village are concerned, they are shaheed. Keep that in mind. And what amazed me at these various places, these sad ceremonies, was the stoic nature of the family. And what did they ask for? Upgradation of the school, so that if it was just a school that was going up to 5th class or more, they wanted it up to 10th, or they wanted it up to 12th, and possibly a gate leading to the village. That's all they asked for. I'm very proud of our Punjabis, and I'm very proud of all our soldiers who are in the Indian Army, in the Indian Air Force and the Navy. I'm most thankful to the government of Punjab, His Excellency the Governor, and of course the Army Commander, Headquarter Westcom, to have always supported us. Along with that, you'll see some of the people on this table and many who are not here. This entire festival is run by volunteers. There's no government official who comes here to run it. They're all volunteers, and I'm happy to tell you that over 2 years we have taken this festival out towards other districts, but so far only up to Patiala. We've run the festival in Patiala too, and it has been a great success. Some of the things that we do are principally for the children, for the youth. And you know the way it is, when we were running the Guardians of Governance scheme, each guardian, each person, a guardian, a GOG as we used to call him, was a drug prevention officer. And therefore the armed forces have taken a lead in trying to stop drug use, and those who use it, how to tell them to get over it in a proper manner. We do have a number of hospitals that deal with drug addicts, but the greatest problem comes when he leaves that hospital and goes back to his village, where he might start resorting to it again. This year, there are various subjects that we'll be touching upon, and one of them is that the nuclear umbrella, which was supposed to prevent wars, has in a way failed. Because you see the wars that are erupting, small and big, around the globe. And so in a way, that threat of a nuclear attack has completely gone away, because people feel there'll be no war. Much like in India, there's a feeling that there'll be no war. Al-Firdausi, in his book Shahnama, he had written about Alexander the Great, that he had a mirror, and when he looked in the mirror, he could see the dispositions of his opponent, his enemy, and not only that, he could read their intentions too. Now we've come to a stage in warfare where this is possible. And we'll talk about it later. And do remember that even earlier for Alexander, his attempt always was to get quickly to the king and kill him. Because by killing the king, the complete kingship used to fold over. There's no change now. Although the king is symbolic, but the country can be attacked not merely on the front lines, but very, very deep. In 1904 and 1926, there was a gentleman called Sir Half Mackinder who wrote 2 books, and in that he postulated a theory, and the theory was of the heartland, or what is referred to as the pivot of geography. And in that he said, who rules East Europe commands the heartland. Who rules the heartland commands the world island. Who rules the world island commands the world. And what he referred to as the world island was East Europe and further east. Now you have a significant change in geopolitics at present, where you have Russia, China, North Korea and Iran actually occupying the heartland, and they are now together. Their interests seem to have merged. So we will be talking about this. National security policy seeks to build common interests within the country and outside the country. And as Kautilya said, your enemy's enemy is your friend. Now these days, where everything has got to be politically correct, you possibly can't use the word enemy. So at least you can use inimical. Now we've got to take a very hard look in India and into ourselves and see who our neighbors are and whether they are friendly or not, and who their neighbors are, whether they are friendly or not. Now, what we've got to keep in mind is that in the Northeast, in 1824, there was a Treaty of Yandabo. 1826, there was a Treaty of Yandabo between the British and the Burmese. And by that treaty, the Burmese agreed to cede to the British Assam, Manipur, and seize all interference in Kachar and Jantia. Now what this really tells you is that the Burmese, and this is a historical fact, they had taken over Assam and they already had Manipur with them, and they had a great influence in southern Assam, which is south of the ridgeline, the Meghalaya ridgeline that extends towards Nagaland. Now, why it is alarming is that prior to 1971, and although the Chinese had stopped aiding insurgencies, Pakistan, through East Pakistan, had aided insurgencies like in Mizoram, etc. And now we do have an inimical, possibly Bangladesh. And so when you look at the Northeast, there are threats that are possibly emerging. There's a lot been said about China and about the line of actual control. You have the line of actual control, which is in the Ladakh area. People have ceased talking about Aksai Chin. Everything has been narrowed down to the line of actual control, and the questions keep arising. There are surveillance, there are satellite images that show you a certain amount of land which has been taken over by the Chinese. And some say no, some say yes. But the fact of the matter is that possibly our responses to stabilize tensions in the line of actual control are also tempered by the fact that China is our largest trading partner. They are now at $118.4 billion, whereas USA, which was the largest trading partner, is at 118.3. So they pipped them just by a couple of decimal points. You know that our business houses are trading with China, and China's GDP stands at roughly $17.8 trillion, whereas our GDP is $3.5 trillion. Of course, we want to boost it up to 5 trillion, but the fact is, at present it is 3.5, and so 1/5 of China, and China's land area is 3 times more than India. So there are, I would say, many reasons why there is a go slow as far as the borders are concerned with China, and these are credible, these are sensible, but they have to be looked into. Another initiative that has been taken by the government of India is to increase the trade with Europe. And in this, there's also what I'd mentioned to you earlier about the pivot of geography having been more or less taken over by 4 nations. Added to that is the belt, the BRI of China, which is actually linking all these areas, and not only that, coming down through Pakistan to the warm water port of Gwadar. Now this is a fact. And to get around that, earlier it was planned to have a pipeline from Iran coming through Pakistan and to us, but that work stopped. So now you've got what is known as the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or the IMEEC. Now this is basically, it's got 2 things in it. One is the physical stuff, which is the movement of goods by roll-on, roll-off from a port in Karwar to Khalifa in the UAE, and from there by land, by rail, up to Haifa, and from thence again by sea. Although Turkey wants this rail line, etc., to actually head through Syria and then continue along to Turkey. However, the other pipeline which is there is for clean energy, hydrogen, is also for data links, which follows along the Mediterranean and then the Red Sea problem. Our problem really is the first link, which is through the Arabian Sea. Going through the Arabian Sea, currently, as you know, you have non-state actors like the Houthis, who are already destroying shipping in that area. So what it really comes out is that possibly our naval strength will have to be much more than what it is today. Do keep in mind that the trade with China and the trade with the USA, our 2 largest trading partners, is not going to go through this, because they don't need to go through this. China will be through the Malacca Straits to the east and around the Cape of Good Hope onto the United States, or the other way around to their west coast. There are many factors. There are many factors of national security, and India, as you well know, has many religions, many languages, thousands of dialects, and the whole aim is to ensure that one of the important pillars of national security is internal security and social harmony. How to ensure that. And this becomes important because according to the 2011 census, on a religious basis, we have 79.8% are Hindu and 20.2% are non-Hindu. Now the whole object is how to keep them together as a national security. So we will talk about this. Ukraine has been in the news, and we will be discussing that. And it is commonly believed that the Ukraine war started just about 2 years ago, or a little over 2 years. But that's actually not true, because the area of Crimea was actually part of the, because they were big states. For example, that time they were called socialist states. It was part of the Russian socialist state and not part of the Ukraine socialist state. But in 1954, Crimea was transferred to Ukraine. And it was done by Nikita Khrushchev, who was then the Prime Minister. And incidentally, he was from Ukraine, just as Stalin was from Georgia. That being said, in 2014 is when Russia took over Crimea and started supporting the Russian, you could say, the mercenary forces to take over the Donets. So it's been going on for a long time. From the point of view of ideology, it goes further back. But from 2014, this has taken place. And it's a completely modern war that's going on there. We'll be talking about it. There was the Azerbaijan and Armenia conflict, which came to everybody's attention, because you suddenly saw yourselves viewing a completely modern war, where there were new weapon systems, there were the drones, and there was the use of cyber technology, etc. And so it was a new paradigm altogether. And what comes to mind is the old philosopher in warfare, Sun Tzu. He had two very interesting sayings, and the first was, if you know yourself and the enemy, you can win 1,000 battles. And the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Now with technology, this has become all the more possible. And we are going to discuss this because the driving force of warfare is now technology. To eventually leave India in 1947, they left a politically united country. From Balochistan to Nagaland and Manipur, from Ladakh down to Kanyakumari, politically it was one country. There were, of course, 542 principalities that were across the map, but they would have to fall into India. What happened? You are well aware of. And you will understand that there was no king or conqueror throughout history who ever had such a domain or had conquered all of India for what it meant. So this is the first time we'd been given a chance, and we didn't take up the challenge for whatever reasons. As far as the armed forces are concerned, we fought the first Kashmir War, which was 47-48, at a stage when the enemy was at the gates of Srinagar and they were pushed back, and Ladakh was also saved. We fought in 1965. And in 65, many historians and many armchair strategists, they say that it was a stalemate. Now, stalemate has got to be judged, any war has got to be judged from the war aims that are set out by a government. What were the war games at that time? There were 4 war aims, and the first was to give Pakistan such a knock that in future it never tries to wrest Kashmir from us. The second was Pakistan had got a lot of equipment, particularly armor, protected vehicles, tanks, etc., from the United States. And the aim was to severely destroy them. The third aim was actually, when you look at it from the tactical or you can say operational point of view, was that take only so much area as is necessary for the operations. And after the war, it will be given back to Pakistan. And the fourth aim for the Air Force was that they will not bomb cities or urban centers. So these were principally the 4 aims of the war. And when you look at 1965, there's no doubt that we accomplished them. As far as destruction of the equipment was concerned, you must have already seen pictures of Patton Nagar, where over about 90 AFVs were lined up. And even in the Sialkot sector, something like 150 to 200 tanks were destroyed. And in that sector, 2 of the Pakistani armored regiments, that is 11 PAO and 10 guides, ceased to exist. You all know what happened in 1971. You created a new nation. Of course, it's taken a different turn now, but you had created that nation. And then in 1999, from a very difficult position, our troops managed to gain the upper hand and retake those formidable features around Kargil and further north. We've always had a problem in Jammu and Kashmir. We have a large number of troops that are there in that region. And this actually, strategically, for Pakistan is a very good thing. Because we have many more divisions than they have. So they know that so many divisions are already locked in that area. And there are waves of peace in Jammu and Kashmir. The army manages to get things under control, and then politically no settlement will come, and so this wave goes up and down, and through the ages. The Kashmiris really had no cause, no proper cause, but the abrogation of Article 370 has given Pakistan a cause to light up whatever may be there in Kashmir. And along with that, as far as the eastern side is concerned, the Nagas, they were banking upon an equivalence of the Article 370 as their demands. Now that is also out. So we are in a different neighborhood now, both in Jammu and Kashmir and the east, by the creation of Bangladesh. Pakistan, as we know, is in trouble. Normally the trouble that is listed out is economic, but the trouble is more severe than that. There's a saying, if you ride a tiger, you can't get off. And they had ridden the tiger of the Taliban by supporting them, actually supporting the United States. And now the Taliban is in Afghanistan. Now the threat is not really physical, because Pakistan has a military, feudal culture and a system, a social system that is functioning. whereas the Taliban culture is entirely different. Should it gain the upper hand, it will be a completely change of way of life for Pakistan. And that is the threat to them. And for us, it is really the instability within Pakistan that's a threat that might be caused by the Taliban. We'll be looking into that. I would also like to tell you that the various things that we do for the children, two of them are very important. One is the Samvad. As many as 2,000 children come every day to the festival. They're looked after, they're given lunch, and they get to meet war-decorated heroes who speak to them. And also, we have what is called a Clarion Theatre, in which there is a collection of films about the army, about the armed forces, and that is one of the more popular events of the festival, because the children have to be actually forced out of the theatre to let other people get a chance. And so we will be staging this again. I am very thankful for those of you who have come here. It was short notice, but you have come. And I would be grateful if you could send this message out to everybody that we're looking forward to the youth to come to the festival. And of course, the discussions that will take place will be of a good order and useful to university students and of course the population in general. Thank you for coming, and after this you can have your questions. I'll try and answer them, and then we can go into lunch. Please go ahead.
Before the media asks the questions, I will request, we have the Deputy Director, Tourism Department, Punjab, Ms. Harjot Kaur. I will request her to say a few words regarding the Military Literature Festival.
Incidentally, Harjot is a major, right? And so she's on our side.